The stage lights dimmed, and a hush spread across the vast America's Got Talent auditorium. Everyone waited to see who would walk through the doors next. When they finally opened, the audience gasped softly. Two young Filipino twin girls entered, holding hands tightly. They were conjoined at the chest, their movements perfectly synchronized as if they had rehearsed every step together. Despite the weight of curious stares, the girls wore shy yet determined smiles, showing a quiet courage that immediately caught the room's attention. Simon Cowell leaned forward, intrigued, while the other judges exchanged looks of surprise. Heidi Klum broke the silence first with a warm, encouraging smile. "Welcome, sweethearts. Tell us your names." With gentle voices, the twins introduced themselves, explaining they were sisters who had faced many challenges in life, not just the physical limitations of being conjoined, but also the constant judgment of others. They spoke with grace, not pity, emphasizing that their bond was not a burden but a gift. When Simon asked why they came to the show, one twin answered softly, "We want to share our voice with the world. Music has always been our way of feeling free." The sincerity in her words instantly struck a chord with the audience. Some leaned forward in their seats, sensing that this was going to be more than just another audition. The theater grew quiet again, heavy with anticipation. The girls took their position at center stage, gripping each other's hands like a promise of strength. A nervous laugh escaped one of them, quickly silenced by her sister's reassuring nod. The first notes of their chosen song began to play, and the crowd collectively held its breath, waiting to hear what these extraordinary sisters would do next. The theater was so quiet that even the faint hum of the air conditioning could be heard. Then, as the instrumental began, the twin girls shared a look only they could understand, a silent conversation between sisters who had spent every moment of their lives side by side. One gave the smallest nod, and together they took a deep breath. The first note slipped into the air, pure and trembling, like the soft chime of a bell. The audience instantly straightened in their seats, stunned at the clarity. Within seconds, the second twin joined in, her voice weaving around her sister's like golden thread. The harmony was seamless, almost otherworldly. Instead of two separate voices, it sounded like one whole voice divided into two delicate streams, meeting again in unity. Gasps of astonishment rippled through the crowd. A young woman in the front row clasped her hands over her mouth, tears already forming. In the judges' panel, Howie's jaw dropped as he leaned forward, his eyes wide with disbelief. Heidi rested a hand on her heart, whispering, "Oh my gosh," while Sophia muttered under her breath, "This is magic." Simon, usually the stoic figure, did not blink. His head tilted slightly, and his arms folded, as though he was carefully dissecting every note. But beneath that stern exterior, his eyes softened, betraying an emotion he rarely let slip on live television. The twins sang of hope and resilience, their voices rising and falling in perfect balance. The melody filled every corner of the theater, wrapping around the audience like a warm embrace. For those few moments, no one saw them as different. They were not defined by their condition, they were artists, and their music spoke louder than anything words could ever say. When they hit the final note of the verse, the auditorium erupted, not in applause yet, but in stunned, reverent silence. The entire room was captivated, waiting for what would come next. As the performance moved into the heart of the song, the girls seemed to shed every ounce of nervousness. Their voices grew stronger, each note carrying not only technical precision but raw, unfiltered emotion. One sister took the lead, her voice trembling slightly at first before rising with confidence, while the other layered harmonies so rich and powerful that the entire audience felt wrapped inside their sound. It was no longer just singing, it was storytelling. The lyrics spoke of endurance, of standing tall despite storms and shadows, and the twins sang them as though every word had been carved into their lives. People in the audience began to cry quietly, not just because the song was beautiful, but because they felt the truth behind it. These girls weren't performing for fame, they were pouring their souls into each note, sharing their journey of resilience and hope. The camera cut to the crowd. Mothers hugging their children, strangers holding hands, and fans with trembling phones struggling to record through tears. Backstage, even the crew, seasoned professionals who had seen hundreds of auditions, were visibly shaken. One of the producers whispered, "This is history." On the judges' panel, Heidi dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, Sophia shook her head in awe, and Howie pressed his hand against his mouth, too moved to speak. But it was Simon's reaction that stunned everyone. He leaned back slowly, his usually sharp eyes glistening as if fighting back tears. For a man known for his blunt critiques, his silence was the loudest reaction of all. The twins reached the chorus again, voices intertwining like threads of light, and ended with a soaring harmony that seemed to lift the entire theater. The moment the last note faded, the crowd couldn't hold back any longer, the silence shattered into thunderous applause, cheers, and a standing ovation that shook the room. As the applause thundered through the theater, the twin girls stood frozen at center stage, their hands still clasped, eyes wide with disbelief. They had finished their song, but the standing ovation showed no sign of slowing. Tears streamed down their cheeks, overwhelmed by the love pouring from thousands of strangers. Finally, the clapping subsided enough for the judges to speak. Heidi Klum leaned forward first, her voice trembling. "That was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard," she said, wiping at her eyes. "Not just because of your voices, which are incredible, but because of your courage, your bond, and the way you touched every single heart in this room tonight." Her words brought another wave of applause. Sofia Vergara added passionately, "You reminded us that true art is not about perfection, it's about honesty. You two gave us honesty and beauty together. You are an inspiration to everyone watching right now." Howie Mandel, often known for his jokes, sat in rare silence. After a pause, he admitted, "I talk too much usually, but today I have no words. That was beyond anything I could have imagined. You didn't just sing, you changed people tonight." Then all eyes turned to Simon Cowell. He rested his elbows on the desk, his usually stern face softened. Taking a deep breath, he spoke slowly, "In all my years on this show, I've seen thousands of acts. Some were unforgettable, some were moving, but very few leave me speechless. What you just did was extraordinary. You weren't here to ask for sympathy, you were here to share a gift. And you did it with so much grace and heart that I think the world will never forget this moment." The crowd roared, sensing something big was coming. Simon's hand hovered near the golden buzzer, and anticipation filled the theater like electricity in the air. The twins stood trembling on stage, their small hands gripping each other tightly as they waited for Simon's next words. The audience, sensing what was about to happen, began chanting in unison, "Golden buzzer! Golden buzzer!" The sound echoed through the theater like a drumbeat, growing louder with every second. Simon glanced around, his lips pressed into a thin line, as if he were trying to hold back his own emotions. Then, with a sudden, decisive motion, he slammed his hand onto the golden buzzer. The moment his palm hit the button, the theater erupted. A dazzling shower of golden confetti burst from the ceiling, raining down over the stage in a sparkling storm. The twins gasped in shock, their eyes wide as they looked up at the golden rain falling around them. One buried her face against her sister's shoulder, overcome with emotion, while the other tried to hold back tears but failed, sobbing openly as the crowd screamed with joy. The judges all stood to their feet, clapping wildly. Heidi jumped with excitement, Sophia clapped above her head, and Howie laughed through tears, pointing at the girls as if to say, "You did it." Simon rose from his chair and, in a rare move, walked onto the stage himself. The twins' tears flowed harder when he bent down and wrapped them both in a gentle hug. "You've just made history," he whispered, his voice low but filled with sincerity. The cameras captured every second, the golden rain, the twins crying, the judges applauding, the crowd chanting their names. Across the world, millions of viewers felt the same emotion, knowing they had witnessed not just an audition, but a life-changing moment. For the twins, it wasn't just about winning, it was about being seen, being heard, and finally being celebrated for who they truly were.